Welcome into my studio. How are you doing? How's your soul today? What sort of magic are you creating in your life? I've mentioned this chime before. I have 4 of them hanging up in my bedroom window. And for the second time, this one has fallen to the ground in the middle of the night and woke me up. And this one is the fire element. So for whatever reason, and I don't question, this one wanted to be heard again today. Before I begin, I really want to take a moment to honor my fairy altar in my studio with some bubbles, because fairies love bubbles. And I just want to express my gratitude to magic, because I was gifted with a beautiful, beautiful gift of magic being swept into my life for just a brief, brief moment, but it just felt so incredibly wonderful for that brief moment. And it really reminded me of magic that I can create. And, you know, the magic that I create in my studio, in my space, in my life, in the world. And we all have this ability to create magic wherever we go, and see magic and believe in magic, because it is so incredibly real. So the last time I did a video, and it has been a while, life has gotten in the way. In isolation. I had a busy weekend with yoga teacher training, and I've been making masks, and I've been a little unwell, but I feel really, really good today, and I hope you do too. So in the last video I had done, I talked about different inks that you could make with beets and red wine and turmeric root. And these were the splatters of the remains of that video, which I think are so incredibly beautiful. I did sprinkle a little bit of salt onto the splatters, and of course that kind of draws out a little bit of the ink and makes some really interesting patterns. So I hope to do something in my journal with that page, but I haven't had time. And I also dipped in all sorts of silk organza into the beet juice and into the red wine. So the red wine ones you probably can't see, they're not that much different from the beet ones. But the turmeric, so I actually had put the turmeric in with a container where I had some leftover unicorn spit, and that was a gel stain. And for whatever reason, this piece of organza turned out green. So I think I would do something similar with this page and my organza ribbons that I dyed in the inks, similar to the piece that's behind me. So the piece that's behind me is called Soul Notes, and I don't believe I talked about it in the last video. So the background of this piece are tea bags. And how I get the tea bags so incredibly dark is it's a very concentrated tea solution with the tea bags, but I also add rusted metal. And that's actually a Japanese technique of a wood stain that they create with the tannins from something similar to tea bags and then rusted metal. And it creates this really dark black stain, and that's how I get my tea bags so dark. And these little strips here, they are silk organza that I had dipped into black ink. And the cool thing about that was as what do you call it, sorry, can't think of the name. As the liquid gets pulled up into the fabric, capillary action, I think that's what you call that, the dye broke down into its components. So black is really interesting because black is usually a blue base or a red base. So you can see in this dress that I'm wearing, I bleached it, and so this pinkish hue came out of it. So that means that that black had a red base to it. But sometimes black has a blue base to it, and it will go white when you bleach it. So as this black broke down, it broke down into its red components. So in some of the pieces of organza, there's actually these little touches of red, but it actually came from the black ink. The reason I called this Soul Notes is because at a very particular time in my life, I was finding a lot of feathers on sidewalks. And of course, they say that feathers are messages from the angels. And I was just receiving a lot of beautiful notes to my soul at that time with feathers on sidewalks. And I just wanted to represent that time in my life in that piece. Soul Notes. So to continue on with the theme of maybe you don't have ink in your art supplies, but you do have ink in other ways that you can make marks in your home. You have art supplies. You might not just see them as art supplies. So I did take my cola pen that I've spoken about before in another video, and I dipped it in my beet dye, my beet ink, and I wrote the word love here because it all begins with love, and love is the answer. Love is magic. So I made another ink. This time I used Turkish coffee. I don't know if you've ever drank Turkish coffee, but when it's made right, and I don't make it right all the time, but when I get it right with cardamom pods, it is so delicious. It's like an espresso drink. So I used Turkish coffee because it's a really concentrated, super finely ground coffee. And then I filtered it through a coffee filter, and I did add a little bit of vinegar because I think it will help with these. It will help preserve it, but it will also help absorb it into paper. So I had just taken, this is a little salad dressing cup, and I had dipped it in the coffee and just made a ring. But I'm just going to show you with a brush here. Just have this little brush. And yeah, you can just take cups, like coffee cups, and make rings on a paper and make beautiful, beautiful designs. Yeah, it's a lovely, lovely shade. And when you get pools of coffee, of course, they're more concentrated. And then you could even experiment with salt on there and make patterns with the salt. Another ink that I made with just things in my cupboard is orange pico tea bags. So a super concentrated solution of tea. And so I've had this sty in my eye, and I've had to use hot compresses with tea bags. And so I had ripped up just t-shirts to hold these compresses to my eyes. And now I have this beautifully stained or dyed fabric that I think I'm going to use. And then I also put in some twill tape that I had into the tea, and even some string. So now I have like all sorts of interesting tea stained materials that I can also incorporate into my journal. The tea isn't that much difference in the color of the coffee, but experiment. That is the gold in art. That is the magic, is experimentation. So what teas create what marks on your paper, or on your fabric, or on your string? Yeah. And again, it can just be circles. I use that for something else. Oh, here, I have another one. I just thought that this would be, you know, such a lovely, oh, that one had blue ink on it. So you can mix colors. And of course, you know, you want it to pool down. Yeah, and mix in with love. Of course you do. Because that is the beauty of artwork, is serendipity. That to me is the most wonderful thing about artwork, is when you remove your ego from it and don't try to have control, and you just allow things to happen. And to me, that is the magic. One more thing I want to show in terms of an art supply that could be in your cupboard that you don't even know about. So this is mineral oil, but I think any oil would work. It's just, I use this on my chopping blocks. And I just took, again, this salad dressing cup that I had and made these beautiful marks on this paper. Now this isn't completely dried, but I did want to try having these marks on the paper in the oil as a resist. And so maybe, you know, allowing, you know, what would happen, and I'm not even sure what will happen in terms of just allowing, you know, maybe beet juice, my beet ink, to pool down, and, you know, will it be able to stain where I made the marks with the mineral oil? I find this idea so fascinating because whenever we get an oil stain on our fabrics, of course, we try to wash those out. And that's actually why I dyed this. This was a thrift shop find, and it had oil stains on it that I just could not get out. So I decided, instead of trying to fight against the oil, I would just enhance it. So I applied bleach to it, and I actually did it in a Japanese technique called shibori, and I'm going to show that in another video. But I thought, wouldn't it be such an interesting fiber art project if one embraced the oil stain rather than fighting against the oil stain? What if somebody actually embraced it? And what stains, or what would oil do on different fabrics? And what, you know, the different oils on one fabric? And instead of masking those, highlighting them. So maybe that's something to think about, is the things that we try to fight against, maybe we can actually enhance them in a whole new light. Sending you love always. May you be happy. May you be well. May you be safe. May you be filled with peace and be at ease. Until the next time.